So with the ready to run, you get the car fully assembled and ready to go. You get your radio, you get manuals and a couple of other goodies in here that we'll go through very quickly. There are no tools, batteries or chargers included with these cars, as is the standard with pretty much most of the Team Corelli stuff that you get, especially in their 1/8 scale. So first thing in my hand here is something new that they've included with these kits. I presume that this is standard. This is not just for the sample that I got. But you get a lanyard, which is pretty good. I think it's a really nice touch to have something like this. And you also get a little key ring, which is going to come in handy. I really like my key rings. I'll be putting that one on my keys for sure. Now the lanyard's interesting because there is no way to attach the radio to the lanyard, unless of course you hook it through these handles here. But usually there's like a little loop on the back or something on the base of the radio to hook it up. So it's a good touch to include the lanyard, but it would be nice if the radio had a little loop for it, so you don't accidentally drop your radio. Now, other things that you get in here is a little antenna tube, a little bind plug, and a little cap for the antenna tube, which I have no doubt will probably be oversized, as most of them tend to be, so I never really use those little caps. You get a user manual for the radio, so that will tell you what all the dials and buttons and everything does on there. And then the last two things here, as I quickly pull this out, is of course the user manual for the truck itself and a user manual for the ESC. This will give you all the programming parameters and all the, how to do everything. Keep in mind that the ESC does come with the BEC set at 6 volts. You can set that up for 7.4 volts. These servos are a high voltage servo. They can take 7.4. I've been using mine on 7.4 on all the other cars pretty much since I got them, and I haven't had any issues. Of course, if you're not comfortable doing that, then don't do it. 6 volts will work just fine. And then of course you got the user manual, which will come with a bunch of additional extras that you can purchase, and option parts and standard parts, of course, exploded views on everything, and of course towards the front here it'll have all the information on how to set the car up, how to rebuild your diffs, how to do your shocks, all that type of stuff. Very useful information, of course, for the manual. And I know that about 90% of you watching this know everything there needs to know about these cars and RC in general, but for the 10% that are fairly new, hold on to your manuals, because they do come in handy when you do get stuck and you need to buy parts for these things. Now the radio is one that I've unboxed on the channel before, and it's actually not a bad radio. It's been around for many years under different brands, and Team Corelli have pretty much adopted this one as their standard with all their RTR cars at the moment. It's got a nice foam wheel that's well sprung. The trigger feels well weighted as well. There's no collapsible antennas or anything like that for you to break off, which I think is a good thing. You've got 4 AA's that you'll need to get and plug in here, and the tray is removable, so you can plug in your own rechargeable battery if you've got something that has like a servo plug on it, and then away you go. You can have a rechargeable single pack as opposed to having to purchase 4 AA's all the time. Door's a little tricky to put back on there, but it does go on. Underneath this little flipper door, you've got the usual suspects. You've got an on-off switch down the bottom here, reverse switches for your channels up the top, couple of indicator LED lights in the middle, and then you've got the steering trim, throttle trim, and steering dual rate all the way on the far right just there. Nice little radio, feels good in the hand. Nothing really to complain about here. Okay, so moving on to the car itself, I'll give you a bit of a look at the body just here and how everything sort of looks. I actually don't mind this body at all. I like the styling that they've gone with. I'm just not sure about the front end. I think this could have been cleaned up a little bit more, but the overall shape of the body, the silhouette of it, I think looks totally fine. I like that it's kind of semi-rounded back here. It kind of gives me a little Jambo vibes, because the Jambo is really rounded at the back here. And then of course they've got this overhang going over the rear shock tower, so it doesn't just finish square. Now some people may like that, some people may not, but I think it's a nice touch. It kind of sets it apart from some of the other cars on the market out there today. And the color scheme and everything, that's always going to be an acquired taste. I personally don't mind the green, and I don't mind the other colors that they've got either. I think it looks totally fine, but let's face it, it's just a body. You can always get a different one or get a clear one and then paint it up however you like. Now, of course, this also has the little rubber tethers so that you don't lose your body pins, and you've got roof skids on here as well, which actually don't look too bad at all. This is something that we've seen in the Punisher from a little while ago, and yeah, they've done the same thing here, which is a nice touch. Body itself feels pretty rigid, pretty tough. It feels kind of strong and thick up the top. And then of course it thins out down the sides a little bit, which is pretty standard. And as you can see, it's all silver inside. I think it's okay, it's gonna do all right. Plus this foam here is actually hard up against the roof of the body. So if you do have an upside down landing, this should help support the body and stop it from collapsing on itself if you do happen to mess that up. Overall layout inside is like so, and we'll go from the outside and make our way in. The tires, of course, as you can see, are the Kronos tires. These have been around for quite some time. They're actually super popular. They're probably one of the best tires that Timco Rally have got on their fleet at the moment. The wheels are really nice. These are the same wheels found on the Punisher and the Jambo. I actually like these a little bit better than the Kronos wheels, which kind of look pretty standard. They're just like a 5 or 6 spoke wheel, pretty basic stuff. These actually look pretty good. So that's all very nice. The suspension on this thing is something to behold. It's got a huge amount of suspension travel. I don't know what wizardry Timco Rally have been doing to this car, but it has a lot more clearance now than some of their previous 8-scale monster truck cars, which is something that, you know, I'm really surprised. Like when I saw this and I took it out of the box, I was like, my God, this thing has so much clearance here. It really just invites you to take it off some rough terrain and, you know, do some sends or do whatever, because it just has this huge amount of suspension travel. And the suspension itself actually feels pretty good. So I think overall, this should do okay straight out of the box. But of course, you can, you know, take the shocks out, do some tuning yourself if you know roughly what sort of feel you want to have out of the car. And of course, if you want to have it a little bit lower as well, have something a bit softer, that's entirely up to you. But out of the box, the setup isn't too bad at all. So let's start with the front here. Now, I think these shocks are the same as the previous shocks. I think they've just changed things up a little bit to give this a little bit of extra height. The A-arms at the front are new. So these, I believe, are still backwards compatible with the previous car. So if you want to use these A-arms on your existing Timco Rally trucks, you can use them. At least that's what I've been told. These have also got the little alloy rings on the end here to stop it from splitting from the little pivot balls that are screwed into the end of the arms. And of course, you do have the upgraded knuckles on here as well. The steering knuckles, which yeah, shouldn't give us any issues as far as pillar balls popping off and things like that. The bumper, I think, is the same as the previous models. The bulkheads are the same. But then behind this shock tower is where things start to get a little bit funky and start to get very different. So the shock tower, I believe, is 5mm thick, and it does look machined. So this is a nice touch. It should be a nice strong shock tower. But then when we look behind, you can see that this entire assembly here is quite different to the previous cars. You can see that this center brace goes all the way from the base of the chassis. This is all one piece now. It doesn't stop here like in the previous cars. It just keeps going and bolts on to the back of the front shock tower. And you can see all the little screws on there, how it bolts on. And then on top of that, we have the tower to tower brace, which is more like tower to diff brace really. And this one is bolted on top with its own set of big chunky screws on here to make sure it holds everything in place. And then as we go through, the servo mount and receiver box is still the same as in the previous cars. The motor mount and everything here is still the same as in the previous cars. We got the sliding motor mount. We got our motor, which is a 2050 kV 4074 size can, and this thing has got plenty of power. These electrics have had no issues powering the previous Timco Rally cars. I'm sure they'll be fine here. As we move on to the other side, we have our 150 amp ESC, our battery tray, which is the same as in the previous cars, but they have mounted the little on and off switch back here, which is a nice touch. I like that. It's really nice and tidy. And then of course we are running XT90 connectors, and you can run, you know, a single pack, or you can take out the loop plug and then run twin packs, two 3S's or two 2S's, depending on your skill level and how fast you want to go, I suppose. The tower is the same as in the previous cars, and then of course they got this big foam block on there to kind of protect the body, as I said earlier. Now, as we move on to the back diff to tower brace, you can see they've done the same sort of thing here, but in the rear. So we've got our center brace, which bolts on all the way down the bottom here and goes all the way up, all in one piece, and bolt onto the back of the rear shock tower. And then of course you got your wing mount over there that you can see just there. And I believe on top, this little piece here, I think this might be new. I don't recall seeing this in other models. And then we've got this piece, which similar to the front, kind of holds that tower to center diff brace and locks everything into place. Now the way that they've done this, it just looks a little bit more integrated into the design of the chassis. It doesn't look like a bolt-on part, something that, you know, it kind of looked like that from the previous models. Although it did do the job, this is definitely a better design. It seems to be better engineered, and it just looks a lot cleaner in my opinion. So good on them for doing that. And I guess that's one of the reasons why this is not a Kronos, this is a KAGAMA. It's a new model, it's a new truck, because they have changed so much in the way that they've done the front and the rear of these trucks. The A-arms are different. This entire steering assembly and mounting is totally different, as is the rear. The only thing that I think still remains the same are these twin braces here that go on to the rear of the chassis. And they are just here to obviously help spread the load if you take a big impact on that rear shock tower. Now the rear bumper, I believe, is still the same. We do have aluminium, whoops, can't see it because of the wing. We do have aluminium hinge pin braces back here, as well as in the front, and the same thing in the front of the front A-arms. If I can spin the car around, we got an aluminium hinge pin brace here. So this is totally different. And the way that they've designed this is you actually have the front and the rear hinge pin braces are actually bolted to the chassis. So both of these braces are bolted to the chassis. What that means is that it now protects the bulkhead from snapping in half. So when you take a hit on these A-arms, the stresses are no longer kind of going to the bulkhead. They're going to these hinge pin holders, which are now bolted to the chassis. So there is no way that you're going to be able to break one of these bulkheads. At least in theory, that seems to be the case, right? So these bulkheads now, these diff housings, they should be fine. Unless you have some kind of catastrophic failure of some sort, you run into a tank or whatever, maybe then you might break that. And I'm not saying that you'll never will. Things do stress and fatigue over time, so there is a chance that might still happen. But the way they've designed it on paper, this thing should be bulletproof now. So let's hope that that is in fact the case. In case I haven't mentioned it, front and rear sway bars are pre-installed, and we do have mud guards on the back here. The A-arms on the rear are also different. These have been redesigned. They're a lot chunkier, a lot beefier. You do have a couple of adjustments on the shocks on the A-arms, both front and rear, and there are a couple of adjustments on the shock towers here as well. So you do have an additional hole. And I think on the front, yes, on the front you also have an additional hole just there. So if you want to play around with the suspension geometry a little bit, you can do that. And of course you have fixed camber links on the rear and fixed toe links on the front. Now bear in mind that these are new toe links and camber links. They have been beefed up around the screw here, so they're a lot stronger. They look almost twice as thick, to be honest with you. So they've done quite a good job of strengthening those, so they shouldn't be breaking there too often, hopefully. The other thing to mention is, of course, the spring steel outdrive cups. These are bronze looking things that you see sticking out of the diff housings and everything else. These are all the, upgraded ones that they used to have. They now come standard on this truck. I think the Asuga had them as well. So this seems to be like the new standard for Timco Rally, is to just have this thing beefed up to the nines, where you're not going to really need to get any additional upgrades unless, I don't know, there's going to be people that are going to find weaknesses at some point, but this just, it's kind of hard to fault this car as it is, to be honest with you. It's super beefcake. They've done an incredible job. You've got 5mm shock towers front and rear. Both of them look machined. You've got new bracing on this thing. The A-arms look just completely out of this world. They've taken it to a new level. And then of course you've got this really nice 3mm chassis, and you've got these front bumpers that I really like. They kind of wrap around. This is one of the really cool features of Timco Rally, where these kind of wrap underneath here and do protect the chassis a little bit, because it gives you a little bit of clearance. So they do protect that chassis from getting all sorts of scrapes and bruises and dints and what have you. So I've been sitting here scratching my head a little bit trying to come up with the wish list for this car, because I do want to give something back to Timco Rally and just make them think about certain things a little bit, right? It's one of the things that I like to do with some of these bigger releases. I don't do it with every unboxing, as you probably noticed, but something that's a little bit bigger. And when I have a bit of a connection with these companies, I do like to try and put something in here that kind of makes them think a little bit, and maybe we might see an improvement later on down the line. One of the things that I've always wanted to see on the Timco Rally cars is some kind of tape or protection underneath the body to stop the paint from rubbing off on the body shell where it touches the chassis. For example, on the front here, these shocks are right there. Like, I can feel the shock underneath the body there. So as this thing's running around, it's going to be rubbing. You take some hits here and there, and the paint is eventually going to start to chip away on the body. Now, some might say that's the least of your problems, because if you're bashing this thing around, your body's getting banged up. Like, who cares about if the paint's coming through? But it would be a nice touch. You know, Armour have done it in their previous cars, so it would be nice to have something be done here with these Timco Rally cars as well. Aside from that, I really don't have anything to really complain about when it comes to the car, because Timco Rally have ticked a lot of boxes here. Let's face the facts. They have ticked a lot of boxes with this particular car. I mean, I know some of you out there that are super hardcore and you want to do some like massive launches. You want to jump 3 houses instead of 2. Okay, maybe you might want a bigger power system. Maybe you want to run 8S on this thing. I don't know. Like, there's going to be some crazy wish list out there as well, but that's not really necessary for this car, I don't think. Although the 2050 kV motor, it has proven itself very well over the years, but some of these other cars have been a little bit lighter. This car is weighing in, I think, just over 5.3 kilos. So as Timco Rally continues to add things to these vehicles, they are getting heavier. So this 2050 kV motor might start to feel the weight a little bit more. So it may be something to consider down the line, to maybe get a slightly larger can, maybe a lower kV, maybe go down to like a 17 or 1800 kV with a bigger can to have that little bit more torque. But you know, I'm no electrics engineer, so this electric system might be totally fine. Where I do want to focus my attention though is on the radio itself, because I did see a comment online that really made me think, and I do want to give credit to whoever wrote that comment on socials. I think it was on the Timco Rally Bashers Facebook page or some, I can't remember where I saw it, but somebody said, hey, why are the radios not coming with a speed limiter switch, similar to what we see on the Spectrum radios, where you have a 50, 75 and 100 speed limit. You know, these modern cars should come with something like that, because this radio does not have a throttle dual rate. It only has a steering dual rate. So it would be nice to at least either have a throttle dual rate or have a limiter switch on future radios. So I don't know how long Timco Rally are planning to use these radios, because technically there's nothing wrong with them. But if you do want to have a complete package, you know, not just the car being the best of the best, but have a complete package where it really stands up to everything else out there on the market, then the radio could be something that they could consider in the future and have a look at, and see if maybe they can have something that has a throttle dual rate or a throttle limiter switch of some description, and also a little loop for the lanyard that now comes included with the manual. That would be handy too. So that's going to wrap it up for this unboxing, and if you are still here at the end of this video and you enjoyed it, be sure to hit that thumbs up button before you go. Don't forget to check out the video description. I'll have links in there to the KAGAMA on the Timco Rally website, and you can go check out some more photos and some specs and some stuff, and you can bring yourself up to speed with the car and see everything that it has to offer, as well as all their other cars in their current lineup. I do also want to give a big shout out to Timco Rally for sending this out for review and supporting the channel for the last 3.5 years or so. It's been a wonderful journey to see their progression, to see all the different models that they have released. I haven't had every single one, but I had my hands across quite a large variety, and really have appreciated how they've evolved this platform and their dedication to bringing out, you know, the best 8-scale monster truck, 6S monster truck that you can buy on the market today. So Hopefully this is it. The KAGAMA definitely ticks a lot of boxes. It looks like it's got the hardware and the attitude to really be one of those out of the box, don't need to do anything, just go out and go have some fun and just enjoy the car and enjoy the hobby. So let's see how it goes. I cannot wait to run this thing and just see how it performs and what kind of a beating it can take. And of course, if you want to see that and you're not subscribed, be sure to hit that sub button. It costs nothing and it does help me out a lot. That's it from me. Thank you for watching and I'll speak to you all next time.